Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of those magical shows that only comes around so often. It's a fantastic series for kids that doesn't talk down to them, and it's complex enough that it entertains and leaves a huge impact on adults, even the ones that didn't grow up on it. Avatar is up there as one of my favorite shows of all time, and even though I also adore its follow-up, The Legend of Korra, which for some reason is a controversial opinion, I do agree with plenty of other fans that I wanted to see more adventures with Aang and the gang. Well, good news. There are a bunch of comics that take place where the show left off, and can kind of be considered to be the show's 4th season. On top of that, these books aren't just a shameless cash grab. They are actually really good, expand upon the world, and go toe-to-toe with the cartoon itself. So today, let's dive into the first of them, The Promise. Oh, wait, hang on a second. That's better. Hey guys, Drake from the future here. Before we get too far into things, I need to give a quick thank you to the sponsor for today's video, Registrar Pork Bun, and their .design domain name. As someone who's been in a creative field for my entire adult life, I understand how difficult it can be to get your portfolio to stand out from the rest, but a .design URL could be exactly the thing that you need to help your web design, UX design, interior design, or other design disciplines really pop on a resume, business card, or email address. Plenty of big brands like Spotify, Slack, Airbnb, and Adobe are using .design URLs, so now is the perfect time to snag one for yourself before they're all gone. Registrar Pork Bun is giving out free .design domain names if you go to their website and use the code Drake at checkout, which also comes with free Whois privacy, free SSL certificate, a free web hosting trial, a free email trial, and access to Pork Bun's free super speedy support. Once again, that is a free .design domain name at Pork Bun Registrar when you use the code Drake at checkout. Show the world what you've got and level up your game. But now, let's get back to the video. Released in 2012 by Dark Horse, The Promise was written by Gene Luen Yang, who would go on to write the vast majority of the sequel comics. However, he did work in close collaboration with the series creators, Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko. Now, although he would go on to be well known for his works like The Terrifics and the amazing Superman Smashes the Klan, this was the first time that Yang wrote characters that someone else had made. However, I think that this was a great first outing, because Yang was a huge fan of the Avatar series, and actually got the job because he made a webcomic boycotting the live-action movie. Coming on to illustrate was the incredibly talented Japanese duo Gurihiru, who would later go on to work with Yang on Superman Smashes the Klan. Gurihiru was the logical choice to work on The Promise, as they had done work on the Avatar mini-comics that took place between episodes of the show. If you'd like more information on those, then I actually have a whole video that goes into great detail about them. The Promise opens with the recreation of the show's opening, which is super cute and nicely sets the stage for what's to come, then transitioning to the end of the show where Zuko becomes the new Fire Lord. Desperate to undo the pain and destruction brought about by his father, Zuko made it his personal mission to be nothing like him, even telling Aang to straight up kill him if he started to act like Ozai. As a show of peace, one of Zuko's first acts as the Fire Lord was to remove the Fire Nation's colonies that were established within the Earth Kingdom. Yang got the inspiration for this storyline from the real-world history of Imperial Japan pulling its colonies out of foreign nations at the end of World War II. Opting to go with this plot is a good and logical step for the first story that takes place where the series left off, showing the harsh realities of war and the messy and complicated process of dealing with the aftermath. It shows that Aang defeating the Fire Lord didn't instantly solve every problem on the planet, and that it's tricky to navigate the politics left in its wake. This was demonstrated when a citizen of one of the Fire Nation's colonies tried to kill Zuko when he called for their removal. This would-be assassin is Kori Morishita, the daughter of the mayor of the oldest colony, Vydal. Now, you'd think that this attempt on Zuko's life would be for something like keeping her family in power. But being the daughter of Earth Kingdom and Fire Nation citizens, Kori has a unique perspective. See, some of the older colonies, like Vydal, were established over 100 years ago, and as a result, there are generations of Fire Nation citizens who lived in these cities, and they're the only home that these guys have ever known. Vydal specifically was just a tiny village when it was first colonized, but over the years, it became one of the richest cities on the planet thanks to its unparalleled metalwork, something that was only made possible through the combination of Earth and Fire Nation techniques. Now, with that being said, the Earth Kingdom folks in Vydal were living as second-class citizens within their own city, and that is absolutely no good. But after being shown around by Kori and her resistance group, Zuko came around to the idea that the colonies were a net gain. that despite their second-class status, the Earth Kingdom residents were better off in Vydal than they were 100 years ago, and he agreed to go back on the decision to dissolve the colonies. Aang was resistant to the idea, as he believes that harmony can only be achieved if the four nations remain separate. Because he wanted to do his best for the air nomads to live on in some form or fashion. Remember, Aang grew up over 100 years ago before the war. Back in his day and age, the nations existing and thriving separately was everything that he had ever known. And as such, keeping the Fire Nation colonies was not an option for him. So he took a break from being obnoxiously over-the-top lovey-dovey with Katara to try and solve this extremely complicated situation. B-plot! Toph decided to share her gift of metal bending with the world by establishing the Beifong Metal Bending Academy, and Sokka, getting annoyed by Aang and Katara's constant PDA, decided to ditch them in favor of helping Toph run things. This was made challenging when Toph was kicked out of her own school, since she didn't actually build it and had instead commandeered an abandoned firebending dojo, and those guys were justifiably upset when they returned and took it back. But even though Toph had no right to the dojo, like, at all, she still demanded to have the building, and so a bending tournament was to be held between the two school students to determine leadership. As they currently stood, Toph's pupils stood zero chance, as they weren't able to metal bend no matter how hard she tried to explain the process to them. Even Sokka's attempts at motivation bending weren't doing the trick. Eventually, Toph gives up, but the students overhear her disappointment in them and use that as a motivation to push through their limits and finally learn to metal bend, and ultimately win the tournament, officially landing the dojo's ownership in Toph's possession. Back to Aang and Katara. As a part of trying to figure out if the Fire Nation's colony should be dissolved, the two turtle ducks visit more of them and encounter the official Avatar Aang fan club, a bunch of little girls who are absolutely obsessed with Aang. We even got the shot of a chick being straight up savage with Katara. These girls are trying to recreate the Western Air Temple, and even though they got a lot about air nomad culture very, very wrong, Aang still saw it as charming, and it reminded him of home. After this brief diversion, Aang and Katara return to Ba Sing Se to tell the Earth King that Zuko refused to dissolve the colonies. Naturally, the Earth King was outraged by this news, and unwilling to talk it out, the Earth King mobilizes his army to dismantle Vydal by force, officially declaring war on the Fire Nation. And remember, this was like a few months after the end of the last war. No matter how hard Aang tried to talk sense into him, the Earth King would not listen, declaring Aang an enemy of the Earth Kingdom. Back to Zuko. Heavy is the top knot that wears the Fire Lord's headpiece. Troubled by the colonial conflict, Zuko started to consult his father for advice on how to rule, and Ozai did not hesitate to start clouding his son's mind with doubts that unity could ever be achieved. Yet word travels fast around the palace, and eventually word of Zuko's meetings with his father reached May's ears. When she confronted Zuko about these talks, May broke up with him. But there wasn't any time to pick up the pieces, because as soon as May left, a messenger came with the urgent news that the Earth King had declared war. Aang and Katara rush back to Vydal in order to evacuate the city, hoping to minimize damage in the approaching battle. This news was met by backlash from the Vydal resistance. See, all of them were Earth Kingdom citizens who didn't hate the Fire Nation. Some of those ashmakers were family, teachers, lovers, and the guy who sells mochi. In the middle of this education session, the Vydal chapter of Aang's fan club showed up to help out, and right off the bat, you could tell that they were way different from the screaming fangirls of the last one. They devote themselves to air nomad authenticity, even going so far as to tattoo themselves in the same way as the air nomads. And Aang was not happy about this. See, airbender tattoos are important and sacred to Aang's people, and because of this, he's disgusted by their cultural appropriation. I actually go into this in greater detail in a dedicated video, so if you're interested in hearing more about that subject, then I recommend checking that video out. But anyway, the fan club's actions directly led to Aang siding with the Earth Kingdom to prevent Vydal from staying in mixed society, believing that when cultures blend, someone always has to come up on bottom. The two armies clash, and the gang tries their best to stop the conflict, but it's no use. When Aang and Katara get a moment to catch their breath, Katara explains that after hearing Corey's stance on things, she believes that Vydal should remain integrated. After all, she and Aang are from two different nations. If the cultures and people need to stay separate, then what does that mean for them? After consulting with Avatar Roku, Aang bends a rift around the entire city and gives a big talk to the Earth King to show him just who he's fighting. Citizens of the four nations who were able to set aside their differences and come together. This ultimately gets through to the Earth King and the day was saved. We get an epilogue with Uncle Iroh inventing boba tea, Zuko bringing Azula out of prison to begin undertaking a quest to find their mother, and Aang sitting down with the fan club for a big moment of growth. Aang is now able to see that the fan club was in fact trying to appreciate and preserve air nomad culture, not appropriate it. Yet, since they lacked proper guidance, Aang decided to step up and take a more active role by teaching them how to respectfully participate in his culture, turning them into the air acolytes. Okay, now there is a lot more to the story than can easily and legally be covered in a YouTube video, but there are a lot of neat little details in this book that I want to cover real quick. But for this, I actually want to turn it over to my friend Overanalyzing Avatar. Like the name implies, his channel is dedicated to breaking down the Avatar series and uncovering all sorts of deep lore that average fans, and even hardcore ones like me, miss. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Drake. Over on my channel, I go over each episode of Avatar and point out themes and callbacks and little stuff in the background, and Drake's being nice enough to let me do exactly that with this comic right now. So let's get into it. Okay, so Sokka says Aang and Katara's love gives him the Oogies, right? He says it over and over. Anyway, in Korra, Tenzin has a sky bison named Oogie, which means Tenzin probably named his pet after the word Sokka used whenever his parents showed affection for one another. That's pretty cool. So at the very end of the show, Aang has this necklace that looks a lot like Monkey Otzo's necklace, with an air nomad symbol on it. Here we can see he actually added to it and made a pendant for each of the 4 nations. This scene is an exact callback to the finale episode where Aang talks to his past lives. Roku gives Aang the exact same advice and uses the same keyword, decisive. This is a weird little reference actually. Sokka says Smellerbee is a he, which is a comment Iroh also accidentally made, but Sokka wasn't around for when Iroh was angrily corrected. Also, check it out, it's Sneers, the legend. All he did in the show was eat rice and look at boxes, but he was pretty good at it. He's got more words in this panel than he did in the whole show. Aang just drops his staff to the floor here before he gets into a fight, and if you haven't seen my videos before, that probably doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's every time. He loses his staff every time. Aang calls the Earth King your earthiness here, just like he does in Book 2, Chapter 18.
We're friends, your earthiness.
Toph says this line about metal being earth that is purified and refined, which is actually the same line that Guru Patik says over the scene where Toph first figures out metal bending. And here's another reference to the episode The Drill this time.
It's so dark down here. I can't see a thing.
Oh no, what a nightmare.
Sorry.
And here's General Hao, who is an actual character. You'd be surprised, but he's in there. Alright, Zuko, if you're not trying to be like your dad, try not wearing the Phoenix King helmet, you weirdo. Come on! And finally, I'm about 90% sure this scene is supposed to mirror the end of Season 1 of Avatar with Azula's reveal. The panels on the camera work share a lot of similarities, so that's really cool. And that's all I've got for right now, so thanks for having me on, Drake.
I personally really love The Promise, and I think that it's a great first step into continuing the show. Though that's not to say that it's without flaws. For one, it's really obnoxious how Aang and Katara are constantly calling each other sweetie. Like, come on, find at least a second pet name. Babe, honey, dear, pumpkin, snookums, literally anything else. But on a more serious note, I'm pretty upset that the inequality of the Earth Kingdom citizens was brought up and then never mentioned again. That's a pretty big issue to just sweep under the rug. But yeah. Otherwise, this was a fun read that's chock full of fun little details that don't fit into a basic summary, so please, please, please read the book for yourself. And if you'd like to snag a copy, then I have links to buy it both physically and digitally in the description down below. And hey, there are plenty more Avatar comics out there, so if you want me to cover them in the future, then let me know in the comments as well. But if you like this video, then why not consider subscribing, or even watching another one? And like I mentioned, The Promise goes into the subject of cultural appropriation, and I did make a dedicated video that goes into that subject a bit more, and how The Promise relates to it. I actually had a lot of fun working on it, so maybe you'll enjoy it. And also a big thank you to Overanalyzing Avatar for helping out with this video. Those were like some really deep cuts that I never would have thought about, so please go check out his channel. But anyway, I hope you learned at least a little something new, and hopefully, I'll see you next time.